Hi, my name is Lyuwenyu Zhang, and today I'll be presenting the paper We Are a Team, the Selling of Global Images in Produce Camp 2021. Thank you in advance for listening. So standing on stage after their first performance, Zhang Teng translates the Mandarin comments from the judges to English for his teammate Amu. Then Amu, a Japanese trainee, translates Zhang's English to Japanese for the other Japanese teammate, Yu. This is a hilariously complicated scene from the Chinese idol competition program Produce Camp 2021, or 创造营2021. Scenes like this, portraying the multicultural exchanges between trainees, are often highlighted in the program, creating a distinctively international approach. This year, the show features 90 male contestants from 7 different countries and follows their 3-month journey to compete for the final 11 seats. Streaming weekly from February to April on Tencent Video, Produce Camp 2021 measures, on average, 400 million views per episode in mainland China. By examining the cultural phenomenon Produce Camp 2021 has created, this paper seeks to elucidate the global approach in this program and argues that the incorporation of global images not only helps popularize the show in China, but also sells the image of an open China to a global audience. The year 2018 was called the genesis of Chinese idol competition program by Chinese scholar Yuan. While this might be a slight exaggeration since there were former competition programs like Supergirls and Superboys in the 2000s, 2018 indeed saw the sudden yet anticipated rise of idol competitions due to the proliferation of streaming platforms and the looser censorship around online programming. Produce Camp 2021, being the 4th season of Tencent's Chuang series, is famous for the voting power of its 创始人, or citizen producers, who solely decides the competition outcome. For the first time in its 4-year journey, the show has gathered trainees from 7 different countries, including Japan, the US, Thailand, Russia, Ukraine, Cuba, and China. This is not the first time the show tries to bring in international trainees. In last year's version, the show featured 3 international contestants from Russia, Malaysia, and Thailand, with one of them being Zheng Naixin, debuting in the final 7. This former success allowed Tencent to further explore the possibilities of inviting more international trainees. This year, the show features 23 international trainees, taking up about 1/4 of the trainees in total, making the season the most internationally diverse. Out of the 23 international trainees, 5 debuted in the final 11, taking up almost half of the seats. With this sweeping success of the show's global approach in mind, I argue that the selling of international idol images in China is contingent upon 4 aspects, namely a largely recovered post-COVID Chinese entertainment market, the show's uniquely created diegesis, the transmedial saturation of content, and the successful branding of internationality. While the rest of the world is still recuperating from the COVID-19 pandemic, China has largely recovered from the impact, especially in terms of entertainment production. According to the 2020 industry report of Chinese television and web series, mainland Chinese film and television production started to resume at the end of February 2020. The report also indicates that in the first quarter of 2020, the Chinese audience consumption of web series and other online media has increased 58% compared to that of the same time in 2019. With such an early return to production and an increased consumer need, many reality programs were able to stream their content on schedule, which laid a good foundation for the following productions. With no significant second or third waves of COVID-19 happening, the even better recovered industry starts to attract talents from abroad. It is under these circumstances that Tencent has gathered trainees from other countries. Out of the 23 foreign trainees, 14 are from Japan, 3 from Russia, 2 from Thailand, 2 from the US, 1 from Ukraine, and 1 from Cuba. Most of them came to China at the end of 2020 in preparation for the show. Let's take the Japanese boy band Intersection, for example. This multiracial band was signed by Japanese company AVAX and debuted in 2017. On Intersection's official website, one can trace the band's busy schedule of lives, events, and TV appearances until January 2020, right before the onset of the pandemic. It is under this lack of opportunities in Japan that AVAS has decided that they will let the band audition for Produce Camp 2021. The same situation can be said for many foreign contestants on the show. On top of the external reasons causing an influx of foreign talents, there's also an internal desire for global content in the Chinese media environment. As a highly regulated state, where foreign content rarely makes it onto the official platforms, mainland Chinese audience has always been seeking global content through illegitimate ways. For example, the use of VPN to access foreign content and the underground translation groups posting things online. Successfully debuting an international idol last year, Tencent saw the market need for more international content and great potential in promoting a globalized China to audiences domestic and abroad. By seizing this opportunity during the pandemic, Tencent has smartly introduced global content into a mainline program where the audience can easily access these content without feeling illegitimate. Each year since the first season of Chuang in 2018, Tencent would choose a location, usually a resort or an exhibition space, and turn it into a dormitory for the trainees. During the 3 months filming of the show, the contestants will train and live together in the dorms, and they cannot leave the location unless for outside events. No personal cell phone or internet is allowed for the trainees during the filming to encourage more interpersonal communications, as well as to prevent them from knowing the voting results. For Produce Camp 2021, Tencent chose Haihua Island, shown here, an artificial archipelago to the north coast of Hainan, China. With hundreds of cameras filming the trainees 24/7, Tencent has created an enclosed stage, a unique diegesis, where everything that happened on the island can be packaged as content. My invocation of the term diegesis here is inspired by Canadian theorist André Gaudreau's discussion of early narrative forms, mimesis and diegesis, in his book From Plato to Lumiere, Narration and Monstration in Literature and Cinema. Mimesis refers to the dramatic art of imitation, namely theater, and diegesis refers to the narrative arts like literature, where it is transmitting a story through a narrator. While the two terms seem different, Gaudreau proposes a fusion of the terms for the analysis of cinema. Now, Gaudreau is mostly focused on the fictional text, but I want to extend this fusion to reality TV and the show. Tencent's decision in consolidating the trainees into a controlled environment, cutting off their internet connection to the outside world, and delivering their image as content for the audience creates a theatrical stage where the trainees are at once themselves and not themselves, being real and acting. The power imbalance between the audience with full access to the internet and the no cell phone trainees creates a pocket reality on Haihua Island, independent from reality itself. In this sense, Produce Camp is engaging with the mimesis form of storytelling, where the trainees are acting on stage set by the audience and the producers. In terms of the show's engagement with the diegesis, there are two perspectives worth mentioning. One is the filmic understanding of a diegetic world, where things happening on the island is canonized and in some ways spectacularized. This diegetic world not only makes it easier for the audience to consume the show's content, but also encourages interpersonal exchanges between domestic and international trainees. A simple example can be found when Japanese trainees Rikimaru and Santa are taught dialects from all over China during the great amount of time they spend together with the domestic trainees. This is a situation not likely to happen outside the diegesis of the island during a short period of time. In some ways, the enclosed diegesis is rapidly localizing international trainees. The second perspective to look at diegesis is in terms of Gaudreau's mentioning of Aristotle. He writes, and I quote, "For Aristotle, diegesis is the work of the narrator. Where this narrator expresses itself, its product is diegetic." The concept of the narrator may seem out of place at first, but by creating the isolated diegesis and the theatrical stage, the producers can be argued as the first set of narrators for the show. But more importantly, the 创始人, citizen producers of the show can be argued as the second set. To increase audience participation when the trainees are in the camp, Tencent has designed ways to allow the audience to directly affect the diegesis. An example is found in the highly popular derivative show of the program, Are You a Werewolf? It's a game show where trainees get dressed for an alternative universe and play the game Werewolf. Before the start of each episode, the audience can vote on a weekly ranking, and the top 3 voted trainees can pick what they want to wear in the show. The fans' votes directly affect the clothing of the trainees and sometimes the setting that they're filming in. Filming within the diegetic world of Haihua Island, produced Camp 2021 was able to fully explore the convenience of having all the trainees in the same place and the amount of marketable content this diegesis generates. On top of the 10 main episodes, each has an average runtime of 4 hours. Produce Camp also features 5 derivative shows streaming weekly. Are You a Werewolf, which is a game show, 10 episodes. Dorm Diary, 17 episodes. Training Room, about 40 episodes in total. Diary of the Big Island is an individual vlogs from the trainees, 11 episodes per week. And Instant Dungeon Live, which is a moderated live Q&A, 12 episodes in total. These are just the titled derivative shows, not including dozens of hours of behind-the-scenes interviews and surprise live events happening across different platforms, immersing the audience in a sea of images from the show. Chinese scholar Yang Lijun calls this phenomenon of constant mediation of the trainees' images, and I quote, a closed ecological system of content, commenting on how the isolated diegesis enable the show to continuously produce content for the fans. Although some of the content has nothing to do with the main competition itself, the overflowing images of trainees eating lunch together, teaching Mandarin to their foreign roommates, and helping each other during trainings bring the audience closer to the trainees in the camp and help familiarize them, especially with the international trainees. In turn, it creates a happy image of cultural convergence. Many international trainees have virtually no fan base in mainland China. As a result, these images of them among their Chinese peers in everyday life allow the audience to quickly identify with them, and it helps break down the cultural barriers. Tencent is acutely aware of how this saturation not only localizes the international trainees, but also encourage cross-platform remediation. The remediation of the show goes beyond just reposting videos on their social media. Some trainees, especially international trainees, after the first few episodes, have sparked a spam practice of digging up their overseas posts and reposting them on Chinese social media. For example, as shown here, Japanese dancer choreographer Rikimaru is one of the most popular trainees, ranking in the top 5 throughout. After seeing his first stage, Zelos fans went over the Great Firewall and found his dance videos from TikTok, Instagram, and they even found Rikimaru's early competition videos where he was a teenager. Then these contents of Riki were reposted and widely circulated on Chinese social media again, encouraging fans to seek even more of the derivative programs and interviews of Riki. Tencent's content saturation this year can also be seen in its effort to make the show available overseas. Tencent Video's overseas version, WeTV, features 9 languages on its website, including Thai, traditional and simplified Chinese, Indonesian, Hindi, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Produce Camp and its derivative shows are also fully subtitled in traditional and simplified Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Indonesian, Thai, and English, allowing for wider access to the show. What's more, Tencent tried to engage with the show's overseas fans as much as possible by hosting Twitter Lives and posting video on its YouTube channel, somewhat ironically providing content for international audience from within the Great Firewall. These saturation of content create a web-like media ecology, which in many ways is a modern manifestation of Raymond Williams' idea of flow, where the programming moves, and I quote, towards an increasing variability and miscellaneity of public communications, end quote. Fragmented images of the trainees get posted and then reposted, made into fan videos and even merchandise. Produce Camp 2021's distribution of content While not exactly what Williams was imagining when he proposed the idea of flow in 1975, is nonetheless a great example of how content can flow across mediums, even borders. Now, on top of the saturation of contents, the branding of the show is also carefully done. Sarah Benet Weiser writes about the complex process of branding, saying, and I quote, "It entails the making and selling of immaterial things, feelings and affects, personalities and values, rather than actual goods. Indeed, the successful branding in Produce Camp is almost all about selling affects and immaterial values like personal stories, nationalities, friendships, and nostalgia." For the international trainees who have to live and train in a new environment, one of the hardest challenges they face is the language barrier. Most of the trainees do not speak Mandarin. The show emphasizes this language barrier at the beginning, and with the progression of the show, Tencent further highlights moments when Chinese trainees help their international friends in learning Mandarin. For example, Zhou Keyu and Patrick, both of whom debuted in the final episode, are always packaged together as language buddies. Zhou speaks really good English, and Patrick, with a multiracial background of German and Thai descent, learns Mandarin rather quickly from the daily interaction with Zhou. Throughout the show, the program shows the progression of their friendship through language lessons, where Joe helps Patrick understand the difficult lyrics and giving him emotional support when he's down. There are many more quote unquote storylines like this, showing the international trainees gradually learning Mandarins with the help of their Chinese friends. And not surprisingly, the international trainees who visibly learn Mandarin faster usually have a higher ranking in the voting results. In other words, Tencent is branding and selling the localization of the international trainees to fans who happily consume the images of their idols learning their culture. A similar way of branding can be seen in the promotion of traditional Chinese culture, both through the trainees and through the program itself. David Morley writes in Where the Global Meets the Local, Notes from the Sitting Room, and I quote, "The we feeling of community has to be continuously engendered by opportunities for identification, as the sense of nation is manufactured. In Produce Camp 2021, the nation is also branded as an appealing image that speaks to domestic audience patriotism and to international audience curiosity. Liu, who won first place in this season, has a distinct brand of being the ambassador of traditional Chinese culture through his dancing and his clothing. Setting aside the legitimacy of this brand, he does attract great attention, especially from the international trainees. Santa, shown here, a Japanese trainee who won 3 world champions in different street dancing competitions, battled, quote unquote, with Liu Yu during the first episode because he's very attracted by the Chinese element in his dance. Cultural convergence like this happen all the time and is highlighted. On top of the exchanges between trainees, the show also tries to incorporate Chinese culture through different means by setting the stage of Are You a Werewolf in ancient China and dressing the trainees in traditional Chinese clothing. Another prominent brand and a somewhat opposite approach to the localization mentioned above is the incorporation of globally accessible images from the production side. During the filming of the main episodes, all trainees are equipped with earphones with simultaneous interpretations in their respective languages. What's more, the signs posted in the dorm are always have all the languages spoken in the camp on them. Setups like this frame the show with a globalized image of China, showing how international trainees are taken care of and thriving in an internationally friendly Chinese environment. Here, the branding is achieved through a combination of national pride for the domestic audience and images of an open and welcoming China for the overseas audience. During the theme song performance of the show, 90 young boys from around the world sing and dance in unity, passionately sing the lyrics, "We are a team," in Mandarin, Japanese, Thai, English, and Russian. The camera pans and lingers on these young faces where their features are different, but their smiles are the same. One fan commented under the official YouTube video of the performance, and I quote, "As an international fan, seeing a show embracing multiple cultures, languages, and representation brings so much joy. The internet is such a powerful tool for connecting the globe." End quote. Well, whether or not the internet has the power to connect the globe is a much bigger question than the scope of this presentation. But there's no doubt that Tencent has introduced a purposefully global perspective in the making and promoting of Produce Camp 2021. Now, there are many more things to examine about the show. For example, the somewhat toxic neoliberal fan culture, the authenticity of the trainees, the democracy of the voting process, as well as the post-competition situations. But being mindful of time, this presentation has focused on the production and distribution model of Produce Camp 2021, which in many ways reconfigured the sites of consumption for television and new media content, as well as broaden the audience demographic in a post-COVID China. It has introduced the possibilities for foreign images to thrive in China while attracting a global audience through Tencent's transmedia platforms in a converging media market. Thank you so much for listening, and I really look forward to discussing more with you all during the Q&A.